Welcome to this episode. The topic is 5 frequently asked questions about osteoporosis and strength training. So without further ado, let's get into number 1. We're going to start at the beginning. So question number 1 is it safe to exercise when you have osteoporosis? Now, the answer is yes, but it depends. And what I suppose depends is the condition of the osteoporosis. So what sort of stage is it? Have you just been diagnosed with it? Have you had it for a long time and you've had a number of fractures? Things like that. That will kind of determine where you start. There shouldn't really be too much of a restriction on exercise because there are a lot out there. So with regards to if we go to a sort of a worse state of osteoporosis and you've had fractures in the past, obviously there is some care to be taken with it. And I guess with anything that I'm about to say in this whole episode, I would consult a doctor or some sort of medical professional to be able to give you some more insight as to your specific scenario. I can only go off sort of general guidelines with regards to sort of my expertise, knowledge and the condition, because again, I don't know the individual that's listening or watching this. So the first part is it depends. Like I said, if we go to sort of the worst end of the spectrum, or the more fragile end of the spectrum with regards to osteoporosis, obviously we need to be looking at the lower impact type of exercise, because with regards to osteoporosis, what your bones need is a stressor that they can respond to, and impact is one of them and muscle strengthening is another. So with regards to what type of exercise, or where do you start with exercise, obviously the further into osteoporosis, or if you've had more fractures, obviously you need to be more careful with it, but also you need to start at lower impact and lighter weight. What that will start to do, that will start to condition the muscles that will pull on the bones, which they will then start to respond to. Now again, with regards to the specific weight and the specific low impact exercise, that's not something I can really comment on, but what are low impact exercises are things, with regards to everyday stuff, are things like walking. Obviously that's a very simple one. And with regards to exercise, it's very light exercise. So exercise they are challenging the muscles. I would probably start with small movements like bicep curls, like lateral raises. Now, if you want to look those up, you can look those up on Google. So lateral raises for the shoulder, bicep curls, tricep extension, some shallow squats, things like that. With regards to the bicep curls, the lateral raises, even the overhead pressing, start with lighter weights, because what you want to start doing is start to challenge the muscles. It's not going full-blown strength training, because again, that's a kind of a relative term, but we will come on to that. Now, if you've been like literally just diagnosed with it and you're like, oh my God, what can I do? You can then start moving up the impact scale, if you will. So you can start doing things that are slightly more impact based, which would be, the obvious one is jogging. So that's more impact than walking. So you can see walking, jogging, and then you can go up to like sprinting, which would be even higher impact because your foot is hitting the floor that much harder. Obviously with the walking, you could go to fast walking. So you've got sort of just walking, then you've got fast walking, then you've got jogging as a higher impact exercise. You could walk with a weighted bag on your back, which is known as rucking. So again, the added weight will give you a little bit of extra impact because of the weight that's going down through the body, and obviously when your foot contacts the floor, it's going to respond to that added weight. So the more osteoporosis that you have, let's say, and again, if you've had fractures in the past, that's going to play its part. So you would start at the lower impact, lighter weight end. If you've just been diagnosed with it, then you've got more of a license to be able to choose more exercises, heavier weights to do. And again, I should just ask, the reason I chose those simple exercises for low impact is because they're very safe exercises to do. There's less chance of tripping, falling, things like that come along with it. So if you start doing lunging, stepping up, there's a much higher chance of tripping, which then exposes you to a greater risk of another fracture. So again, just starting with simple exercises that you could even do seated if you wanted to. So yes, there's a lot of sort of guidelines and a lot of places that you can take it. It's just understanding the best way to take it. And again, if you're going to make this decision on your own, it's probably best to start or err on the side of caution than, jumping in at the deeper end, if you will. So is it safe to start exercise? As a quick summary, yes, it is. It just depends on the condition of your bones, which will then dictate whereabouts you start with either impact exercises or muscle strengthening exercises. Question 2 is, what type of exercise is good for osteoporosis? Well, I've kind of mentioned the two already. Number 1 is more impact. So that means, as I've mentioned with the walking, your foot hits the floor a little bit harder. So you start with normal walking, you move up to faster walking, and then you move into a jog. With each of those, your foot is hitting the floor that much harder. Now, with regards to walking, because everyone's doing it every day anyway, that is, in some respects, that's kind of the baseline. So it may be, as a way to build up capacity, is to go on longer walks than you feel you're able to, and then moving into faster walking and jogging if that's your choice. The second sort of category or group of exercising is muscle strengthening, and with both of these exercise examples are, again, depending on where you're starting, just weighted exercise. So bicep curls, lateral raise, overhead press, squat, lift, any type of exercise. You could even go as far as saying core exercises as well, because that will get the muscles pulling on the spine as well, or on the vertebra, and then that will start to toughen those and build some density into those as well. So that can be a nice easy start as an exercise choice, which is core exercises as well, but basically muscle strengthening exercises. And what we're going to talk about later will involve core exercise, because we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the journey to go on with regards to muscle strengthening. So as a very sort of broad category of exercises, we want to start looking at impact. Obviously, if you then take it on a bit further, you can then start talking about sports. Obviously, one that is taking on quite a foothold, certainly in the UK, and I would imagine around the world, is paddle. There is more impact, but it's quite low level impact for a high impact sort of sport, because you are moving around. Your foot will hit the floor because you do have to stop and change direction. There is an element of jogging in it, but the court is quite small and you are able to not walk around the court, but it's not like you're sprinting around the court from left to right, forwards to back and things like that, because the court is that much smaller. So again, you can think about the sport to do with regards to the impact that you're doing. Obviously, rugby is going to be a very high impact because there's a lot of sprinting, there's tackling, so on and so forth. So as an example, that's not going to be terribly useful. Basketball could be another one. Again, it's sort of moving up because the court's bigger, there's a bit more sort of sprinting involved. It may not be sort of 100% sprinting, but it will be more than paddle. So you can start to see there is a scale of impact that comes with it. So you would choose the lower impact sports, if that makes sense, which will be in sort of the higher category of impact. So as I've mentioned, you would start like the walking, the fast walking, running, and then you could probably look at paddle or a lower impact type of sport like that. And with regards to muscle strengthening, again, you would start with the simple, safe exercises. Then you would move into sort of bigger exercises, squats, deadlifts, overhead presses, pulls, push-ups, things like that, which are going to be adding more impact because of the extra weight that comes along with doing those exercises. And to be a little bit more specific, we'll come on to question 3, which is what is muscle strengthening exercise and what is the journey to go on when we're starting to think about that. First, we need to establish, as I've mentioned, sort of where you are. Now, I've loosely mentioned where is a good place to start. So we would start basically 2 things. So we've got the end in mind, which is to do sort of the strengthening exercises. So let's begin there. If we say the end in mind is doing, from an efficiency perspective, you can minimize the exercises. So you can do a squat, a deadlift, an overhead press, and a pull. So it could be a row of some kind, off a cable machine, of a dumbbell, of a kettlebell, whatever it may be. So let's just say that's the end in mind, and we want to be doing 6 reps of that, so it's going to be quite a heavy weight. So we're going to say that's the end in mind, doing those 4 exercises with a heavy weight twice a week. Now, without knowing where an individual is in that journey, so I'm going to start from the beginner's end. So what we would do, or certainly what I would do, is you would start with the simple exercises that I've talked about, start with the safe exercises like I've talked about, and we would also add in core exercises and joint range of movement. Because when we're doing overhead pressing, we want the arms to be able to go straight up over the head. So we need the shoulder range of movement to go vertically upwards, because what can happen is we can push outwards with an overhead press because we can't get the arms up over the head. So that's something that we need to be mindful of. So we need to build the core to be able to hold the spine in position and to be able to maintain proper technique through exercises. Then we need the joint range of movement to be able to do those exercises. And it's the same with the squat and the deadlift, in that we need the hips and the ankles to be able to have a minimum standard that we can sort of go through enough range of movement of the exercise so we can go down far enough to challenge the muscles, which then challenge the bones. So that's kind of like the first step. We have just simple strengthening exercises, bicep curls, lateral raise, things like that, shallow squats with a lighter weight. Then we have the core exercises and the joint range of movement, just to try and sort of prep us for the next stage. And the next stage is where we start building more of a muscular endurance. So with the sort of the safe and simple exercises, you would start at 12 reps. So it would be a lighter weight. You would work on your muscular endurance, so the ability to perform 3 sets of 12. What you would also do is, as I've mentioned, you'd add in like shallow squats. Obviously, you can start with body weight and then you can start adding weight in. So basically, you're aiming to complete 3 sets of 12 reps with a given weight. Now, what that given weight is depends on the condition of your body. What you would then do, once you've got to a point where you can perform 3 sets of 12 with the given weight, and let's use squatting as the example. So we've started with our shallow squats, body weight, up to 3 lots of 12. Then we've introduced a weight for the shallow squats, and we've started now to drop the hips a little bit further. So we're dropping the hips because we've been working on our core strength, we've been working on our joint range of movement, we can drop a bit further in. So we're starting to encourage you to come a bit further down. into the exercise. So we would probably maintain that around 12 once we can start to get a little bit deeper into the squat, and we could start increasing the weight a little bit. What we would then do is you may then drop the reps to 8 or 10. You would increase the weight a little bit, and you would complete 3 sets of 8 or 10, again with a given weight. And then again, if you need to drop down in the squat a little bit further, then you would aim to do that. And then you kind of get to that end in mind that we were talking about. So we would be building up with the overhead press, we would be building up with the deadlift, with the squat, and with the pulling exercise. So you would then drop to 6 reps. So you would aim for that, and this is where we sort of work on muscular strength. So we could go down to 4 if we wanted to. So again, with each drop in rep, there is an increase in weight. So it's very much thinking about that journey and that process as we go along. And at each stage, we need to be mindful of the body position, because again, as we go up in weight, we are more likely to not use the range of movement that we've created. We are likely to lose technique, which could be at the knees, could be at the hips, could be at the spine, whatever it may be. So we need to keep all of that in mind when we are performing those exercises. So as an example, what is muscle strengthening exercise? Well, it's kind of all of it. It's the core strengthening, it's the simple, safe exercises, it's the building of core strength, it's the joint range of movement, it's the building of muscular endurance, and then finally the building of muscular strength. Question 4 is some examples of muscle strengthening exercises. Now, I've talked about most of them, but I just want to talk about them in a little bit more detail. So as we've talked about, we've got the simple, safe exercises. So bicep curls, lateral raises, tricep extensions. These are obviously upper body. With regards to lower body exercises, it would be squats, so shallow squats, again starting at body weight and building up to weight. Then we would look at what's called a Romanian deadlift, which is a deadlift, but you don't go down to the floor and pick it up off the floor. The weight is raised off the floor and you sort of pick it up from let's just say a standing position, and then again you can build that range of movement. Again, you can start with a lighter weight with that type of exercise because you're picking it up from a standing position. You can start with like lunges, so forward lunges, back lunges, side lunges, walking lunges. Obviously, what you then do is you start then bringing in a little bit more risk of tripping and falling. With all the exercises that I've talked about, with the squats and the deadlift, you've got both feet on the floor and they are planted. With the upper body exercises, bicep curls, lateral raises, pulls, pushes, you can do that stood up with your feet on the floor, or you can do that sat down. So again, there's that safety element to it. What you can then start to think about are the building up of the weight. So as we build up the weight, with regards to pushing overhead, what we want to do is we want to have some kind of rack, so we can start with the weight in this position and push up over the head. So you would have the weight raised up to shoulder height. You pick it up off the rack and then you push up. Because if we have to pick up that weight from the floor, we have to bring it up to that position. And what happens then is you can't necessarily lift the weight into that position that you can then push over your head. So it means that when you push over the head, you're not using as heavy a weight. So when we are thinking about exercise like that, we really need to start with the weight in the position where we are going to perform it from. So with an overhead press, we would start from this position. With regards to lower body exercises, again, we would want to start certainly with a squatting exercise with a back squat. So a back squat, which is with a bar on the back, like so. And again, we would need a rack for that, because you may be able to squat a heavy weight, but if you haven't got the rack to do that, you've then got to lift it up off the floor, up over your head and onto your back. And obviously that's going to take upper body strength to do that. And as a general rule, your lower body is much stronger than your upper body. So when you lift it up over the head, that weight isn't going to be heavy enough for your legs at some point. So we would need some sort of rack to put that on, so we can put it on the back and then we can squat up and down. And then we've got the deadlift, which is a little bit easier, which is why it's such a useful exercise, is because then the weight is on the floor and we pick it up off the floor. So if there is one exercise to do, it would be the deadlift, because you can put it on the floor and you can pick it up off the floor, which is, something that everyone has an ability to do. Now, with regards to the exercise technique, it may require you to lift the weight ever so slightly off the floor, because you may not have the range of movement to get all the way down into that position. So with regards to the types of exercises or example exercises you would do, you would start with both feet on the floor, and you would go, or seated for upper body, as I've mentioned, bicep curls, lateral raise, shoulder press or overhead press type of exercises from that seated position or standing position. Then it would be squats, deadlifts. They would be the main two exercises. You can add walking lunges, back lunges, side lunges, forward lunges in as well. But then what you're doing is you're then just increasing the risk of trips and falls. But generally, those exercises should be fine as well, because in the years that I've been doing it, I don't think anyone has ever fallen over when they've done a walking lunge. They may have lost their balance or something like that, but I don't think anyone's ever fallen over. So they should be fine, but that risk is there. So with regards to example exercises, it's very much a pushing exercise, a pulling exercise, a squatting exercise and a lifting exercise, and that will give you the resistance required to be able to challenge the muscles, to pull on the bones, to build up the bone health and build up the bone density. Question number 5 is, how often should one be doing this? What are the reps, what are the sets that one should be doing? I've kind of mentioned this again already, but we want to be aiming, when we get to the end in mind, with regards to the heaviest strength training, it's 2 times a week, roughly 30 minutes long. If it's 25 minutes or 20 minutes or even 35 minutes, it's not the end of the world. It's in that ballpark. So it's 2 times a week, roughly 30 minutes per session. We want to start in the muscular endurance end, and then which is 12 reps, so 3 sets of 12 or 2 sets of 12, and then build down into 3 to 4 sets of 6, or even 5 or 4. So anything like that. So it wants to be a relatively heavy weight. Now, how do you decide the weight? Certainly when you get to the end in mind, and even when you're doing the 12 reps, is if you can perform the 6 reps, and then you put the weight down after the 6 reps, and you think, yeah, I probably could have done one more. Not, I definitely could have done one more. It's, I probably could have done one more. With 12 reps, you're probably thinking, I could probably have done 2 more. If you can probably have done 2 more, you're in the right ballpark for the 12 rep training. So it's 2 times a week. It's 30 minutes per session. It starts at 12 reps, and you could probably do 2 more with regards to the weight, working all the way down to 4 to 6, where you could probably do 1 more. Now, to get to that point, with regards to muscular endurance training, core training and range of movement, you can do that a little bit more often. So it's not just a case of throwing yourself in at strength training. So with regards to muscular endurance, core training and range of movement training, you would probably look at doing that 3 to 4 times a week. Now, if you've got the time constraint, you can only do 2 times a week, that will be fine. But as a sort of a top end, 3 to 4 times a week, building up the muscular endurance, building the core. Now, even if you wanted to, you could do 2 muscular endurance sessions and 2 core sessions, which is your 4 times a week. Again, that should be fine. But again, it's building up to that capacity. So you build up all of that, and then your body is ready to do what would be heavier strength training. But again, all of this depends on where you are in your journey with osteoporosis. So again, if you're right at the start of your journey, you want to be dosing a lot smaller. So it may even be just 15-minute workouts 3 or 4 times a week, building up to 30-minute sessions a week or 60-minute sessions a week 3 times a week. So you can start to see that there is a progression here, but again, you have to understand your capacity, so your current level, because as I say to anyone, to be able to achieve something, you need to know 3 things: where you are, where you want to go, and then you can start plotting the graph or the chart or the map to get there. What a lot of people do is they know where they want to go, but they never look at where they are. So they're starting and they're never really quite sure of where to start. And if you're never sure where to start, you're never really sure of where you need to get to. And what they can then do is just jump in and do what they think they should be doing, because that's what the end in mind is, if that makes sense. So they start doing the end in mind rather than building towards the end in mind, which is what we've talked about. So it's building up all of that capacity, building up the tolerances within the body, building up all the muscles, building up all the bones, and then going into your strength training. So hopefully that has been helpful. Hopefully it's given you an idea of the journey that you are on. As I mentioned at the start, think about where you are and think about, if you need help, go and talk to someone, even if it means just sitting down with a physical therapist to be able just to hash out in one session, right, can we just sit down and just talk through a journey that I need to go on and where do I need to start? And if you can get that, then you could go back and see them in 2-3 months' time and then, okay, I'm here now, where do I go now? I'm here now, where do I go now? And sort of, do it in that regard. So yeah, hopefully this has been helpful. Many thanks for watching. If you've liked or enjoyed the content, hit the like button. If you've learned something new, hit the thanks button. If you want to watch more content like this, then please do hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. And if you've got a comment or a question, stick it down below.